If we didn't have tariffs, we would be a very poor nation.
As some American small businesses call them an illegal tax, putting their very survival at risk.
Tariffs and the consequences of all of this is going to basically wipe out the profit we thought we were going to make.
And the Supreme Court here in the U.S. starts a new term today. The justices are expected to take up cases on major topics like conversion therapy, presidential authority, and birthright citizenship. It comes after a summer of legal battles on the Trump administration's policies. ABC News senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer has more.
President Trump has a remarkable winning streak at the U.S. Supreme Court, but will it last? As the justices take the bench this week to start a new term, major questions loom about the future of presidential power.
This is the Supreme Court term where we'll see whether there are limits to the court's view of executive power.
The court will decide whether Trump can fire members of independent federal agencies for any reason, despite 90 years of precedent saying he can't, and whether that authority extends to the Federal Reserve, after Trump took unprecedented steps to remove Fed Governor Lisa Cook.
The Supreme Court has been very open to the president having full removal power for other agencies that are supposed to be within the executive branch.
The court also preparing to weigh in on the president's sweeping global tariffs, billions of dollars on the line.
Okay, so this just happened, and I'm not going to lie, this one caught me completely off guard. The Supreme Court, the same Supreme Court that Trump literally built with his own hands, just turned around and stabbed him in the back. I mean, come on, are you kidding me right now? We're talking about a 5-4 decision that dropped like a bomb yesterday. And get this, one of Trump's own appointees, someone he personally picked, someone he fought tooth and nail to get confirmed, just voted against him. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. This isn't some small procedural thing either. This is big. This is the kind of ruling that sends shockwaves through Washington and has everybody picking sides again. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust headlines anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. The MAGA base, they're absolutely losing it right now. Conservative commentators are calling it the ultimate betrayal. And honestly, can you blame them? Here's what went down. The court ruled 5-4 against Trump's request to block the release of disputed documents and testimony. Now, these aren't just any documents. We're talking about evidence related to ongoing legal battles that Trump's team has been fighting to keep under wraps. Stuff that could seriously impact everything moving forward. And who joined the majority? One of Trump's own justices. This is wild, right? The person who owes their entire Supreme Court career to Trump just sided with the opposition. The headlines practically wrote themselves. Trump's own justices just sided with the opposition. That's a direct quote from the coverage yesterday. Now look, I know what some of you are thinking. You're probably like, wait, isn't the Supreme Court supposed to be independent? Aren't they supposed to rule based on the law and not politics? And yeah, technically you're right. But here's the thing. Trump spent years telling his supporters that he was remaking the court, that these justices would protect conservative values, that this was his legacy. And now those same supporters are watching as the court he built turns around and rules against him. The betrayal narrative is spreading like wildfire through conservative media right now. One MAGA-aligned commentator posted on X, and this is a direct quote, "This is the ultimate betrayal. The court Trump built just backstabbed him right before the election. Can you believe this timing? We're in the thick of his second term. Critical legal battles are happening. The political temperature is already at like 1,000 degrees, and boom, this happens. Here's where it gets even crazier. A Snap poll just came out, and according to this polling, 62% of GOP voters say this ruling makes them question the loyalty of Trump's Supreme Court picks. 62%, that's not some fringe group. That's the majority of Republican voters looking at this situation and going, wait a minute, what's going on here? This is the kind of story that cuts deep because it hits at the core promise Trump made to his base. He told them over and over again that filling those Supreme Court seats was one of his biggest accomplishments, that it would protect conservative interests for generations. And now that promise feels shaky. The fallout from this is already massive. Conservative social media is exploding. Fox News panels are debating whether Trump's justices have gone rogue. There are calls for, I don't even know what, but people are angry, really angry. And here's the kicker. This isn't even the first time the Supreme Court has ruled against Trump's interests. Remember all those election lawsuits back after 2020? The court wouldn't even hear most of them, Trump appointees included. This is becoming a pattern, and patterns are dangerous in politics because they create narratives. The narrative now, Trump's Supreme Court isn't really Trump's Supreme Court anymore. These justices are making their own decisions, following their own interpretation of the law. And whether that's how it should work or not, it's not what Trump's base was promised. So where does this leave us? Well, we've got a Supreme Court decision that's causing absolute chaos in conservative circles. We've got Trump facing the reality that his own appointees won't always have his back. We've got the Democrat side celebrating what they see as proof that the rule of law still matters. And we've got GOP voters questioning everything they thought they knew about the court. This is one of those moments where you can feel the political ground shifting under everyone's feet.
The expansion of executive power does, in a zero-sum game, however, come at the expense of the role of Congress and the judicial branch.
And trust me, we're just getting started, because the implications of this ruling, they go way deeper than most people realize, and that's exactly what we're going to break down. This story is unfolding in real time, and the consequences are going to reshape the political landscape in ways we're only beginning to understand right now. All right, so let's dig into why this Supreme Court decision is causing such an earthquake right now. Because on the surface, yeah, it's a court ruling. Those happen all the time, right? But this one is different. And here's why most people are completely missing the real story. First off, let's talk about trust. Trump built his entire political brand on this idea that he was going to drain the swamp and put people in power who would actually fight for conservative America. The Supreme Court appointments, that was supposed to be his checkmate move, his insurance policy, the thing that would outlast even his presidency and protect his legacy forever. And for a while there, it looked like it was working. The court overturned Roe, big conservative win. They ruled on religious liberty cases, gun rights cases. Trump supporters were celebrating. They were like, see, this is why those appointments mattered. This is why we fought so hard for Kavanaugh and Barrett and Gorsuch. But here's where things get complicated, and honestly, kind of fascinating from a political psychology standpoint. When you appoint someone to the Supreme Court, you don't actually control them anymore. They have lifetime appointments, no elections, no recalls. They can literally do whatever they want based on their interpretation of the Constitution. Now, Trump knew this, obviously, but the message he sold to his base was different. He made it sound like these justices would be loyal, like they owed him, like they'd always have his back when it mattered, and that's where the disconnect happened. Because yesterday, when that 5-4 ruling came down, and when one of Trump's own appointees joined the majority against him, it shattered that illusion completely. Suddenly, all those MAGA supporters who believed the court was Trump's court realized, oh wait, maybe it's not. Let's break down the actual decision for a second. The court ruled that disputed documents and testimony related to Trump's ongoing legal issues have to be released. Trump's lawyers argued that releasing this stuff would be politically motivated, that it would interfere with basically everything Trump's dealing with right now. They wanted the court to block it. The majority said no. They said the law is clear. The documents have to be released. And here's the thing. From a purely legal standpoint, the majority opinion apparently follows pretty standard precedent. This wasn't some activist ruling. It was, according to legal experts anyway, a pretty straightforward application of existing law. But that's not how it's being received at all. Because in today's political climate, everything is viewed through a partisan lens. Democrats are celebrating this as proof that no one is above the law, that even Trump's own appointees won't protect him from accountability. Republicans are furious because they see it as their own side turning against them, and that Trump appointee who voted with the majority, oh man, the backlash has been brutal. Conservative commentators are calling them a traitor. There are demands for, I don't even know, impeachment, recall, neither of which is actually possible for a Supreme Court justice, but people are mad enough to suggest it anyway. Here's where it gets really interesting though. This isn't happening in a vacuum. The Supreme Court has been defying MAGA expectations for a while now. Yeah, they had some big conservative wins, but they've also ruled against Trump specifically multiple times. The 2020 election cases, the tax return cases, various executive order challenges. Each time it happens, there's this same pattern. Trump supporters expect the court to side with him. The court rules based on the law. Trump supporters feel betrayed, and the trust erodes a little bit more. According to that polling we mentioned earlier, 62% of GOP voters now question the loyalty of Trump's picks. Think about what that means. These are the same people who celebrated those appointments, who sent money to help get them confirmed, who saw them as heroes, and now they're not so sure. This is creating a really weird situation where Trump's own base is starting to turn on one of his signature accomplishments. And politically, that's dangerous, because if Trump can't even count on the Supreme Court he appointed, what does that say about his power, his influence, his ability to deliver on promises? The Democrats, meanwhile, are having a field day with this. They're pointing to the ruling and saying, see, the rule of law still works. Even Trump-appointed justices care more about the Constitution than about protecting Trump. It's become this huge talking point for them. And you know what? It's effective because it undercuts one of Trump's main arguments, which is that the entire system is rigged against him. If his own appointees are ruling against him, it's harder to claim bias. It's harder to claim it's all a witch hunt. Now let's talk about timing, because oh boy, the timing on this could not be more significant. We're in Trump's second term. There are multiple legal battles happening simultaneously. The political environment is already supercharged. And then this ruling drops and adds gasoline to an already raging fire. Conservative media has been running with this story nonstop. Every show, every podcast, every social media influencer. They're all talking about the Supreme Court betrayal. Some are trying to explain the legal reasoning. Others are just feeding the outrage. But everyone's talking about it. And here's the ripple effect. This ruling doesn't just impact Trump's immediate legal situation. It impacts how his supporters view the entire judicial system. It impacts future Supreme Court battles. It impacts how Trump himself talks about the court going forward. This is one of those decisions that has consequences way beyond the specific case. There's also this broader context about institutional trust that we need to address. Because here's the reality. Trust in American institutions is at historic lows across the board. Congress, nobody trusts them. The media, half the country thinks they're fake news. The FBI, the DOJ, all of it is viewed through this intensely partisan lens now. In the Supreme Court, it was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be above politics. But after decades of increasingly political confirmation battles, after the Kavanaugh hearings, after the Barrett confirmation, after everything, the court has become just as polarized as everything else. So when a ruling like this comes down, it's not just about the legal merits, it's about which tribe you're in. Are you Team Trump? Then this is a betrayal. Are you Team Accountability? Then this is justice working. There's barely any middle ground anymore. The MAGA base is particularly sensitive to this because they've been told over and over that the system is against them, that the deep state is real, that everyone in Washington is corrupt except for Trump. So when Trump's own appointees rule against him, it confirms their worst fears. It makes them feel like even the people they trusted are part of the problem. And look, I get it. From their perspective, they fought hard for those Supreme Court seats. They defended those nominees through brutal confirmation hearings. They believed Trump when he said these appointments would change everything. And now they're watching as those same justices make decisions that hurt Trump politically and legally. But here's what a lot of people are missing. The justices are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're interpreting the law. They're following precedent. They're being, judges. The problem is that Trump created expectations that were never realistic. He made it sound like these justices would be his personal legal team, and that was never how it was going to work. So now we're in this situation where reality is colliding with expectations, and the fallout is massive. Because if Trump's own base starts losing faith in his Supreme Court, if they start seeing those appointments as failures instead of victories, that's a huge problem for him politically. Okay, so let's break this down into the key points you actually need to understand, because there's a lot of noise around this story, a lot of hot takes, a lot of people talking past each other. But here's what actually matters. Point 1, the Supreme Court just ruled 5-4 that disputed documents and testimony related to Trump's legal battles have to be released. This is not a small thing. These documents could contain information that impacts ongoing investigations, political narratives, public opinion. Trump's team fought hard to keep them sealed. The court said no. Point 2, one of Trump's own appointees voted with the majority. This is the part that's causing absolute chaos in conservative circles, because the expectation was that Trump's justices would protect him, that they'd find a way to rule in his favor. Instead, one of them looked at the case and said, nope, the law requires these documents to be released. Point 3, this is creating a massive trust crisis within the Republican Party. That polling shows 62% of GOP voters now question the loyalty of Trump's Supreme Court picks. That's a majority of the base having doubts about something that was supposed to be Trump's greatest achievement. That's politically dangerous. Point 4, this ruling fits into a larger pattern of the Supreme Court ruling against Trump when it comes to his personal legal issues. This isn't the first time, it probably won't be the last. And each time it happens, it chips away at the narrative that Trump remade the court in his image. So why does all of this matter? Well, let's think about the implications. First, this ruling could open the floodgates for more information to become public. Documents that Trump wanted to keep private are now going to see the light of day, and who knows what's in them. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's explosive, but either way, Trump loses control of the narrative. Second, this creates a political problem for Trump with his own base. When your supporters start questioning whether your Supreme Court appointees are actually loyal, that's a messaging nightmare. Trump built his brand on winning, on making deals, on getting things done. A Supreme Court that rules against him repeatedly doesn't fit that brand. Third, this emboldens Democrats and Trump critics. They're already using this ruling as proof that the system works, that checks and balances exist, that no one is above the law, and that message resonates with independents and moderate voters who might be on the fence. Fourth, this could impact future legal battles, because if Trump can't count on the Supreme Court to block document releases or testimony, his legal strategy gets a lot more complicated. His lawyers have to assume that courts, even with Trump appointees, are going to follow the law rather than showing loyalty. Now, let's talk about what happens next. because this story is far from over. In the short term, we're going to see those documents get released. Whatever's in them will become public. The media will analyze them. Political opponents will weaponize them. Trump will claim they're taken out of context or that it's all a witch hunt, standard playbook stuff. But the longer term implications, those are harder to predict. If Trump's base really does start losing faith in the Supreme Court, that changes the political landscape. The court has been this untouchable institution for conservatives, this symbol of Trump's legacy. If that symbol gets tarnished, it affects everything. There's also the question of how Trump himself responds. Does he attack the justices publicly? Does he try to spin this as proof the system is rigged? Does he double down on the loyalty narrative? Whatever he does, it's going to set the tone for how his supporters react. And here's the thing, Trump's in a tough spot because he can't really attack the Supreme Court too hard without undermining his own achievement of appointing those justices. But he also can't just accept the ruling without looking weak to his base. It's a no-win situation. The Democrats, meanwhile, are going to milk this for everything it's worth. Expect to see this ruling brought up constantly. Expect speeches about the rule of law. Expect campaign ads highlighting how even Trump-appointed judges ruled against him. This is political gold for them. For the rest of us watching this unfold, it's a reminder of how broken our political system has become. Everything is partisan. Everything is tribal. Even the Supreme Court, which is supposed to be above politics, is now viewed entirely through a political lens. And maybe that's the saddest part of this whole story. We've reached a point where a straightforward legal ruling based on precedent becomes this massive political crisis, where justices following the law are accused of betrayal, where trust in institutions is so low that every decision is assumed to be corrupt. This Supreme Court decision is going to have ripples for months, maybe years. It's going to impact Trump's legal battles. It's going to impact how Republicans talk about the court. It's going to impact future confirmation hearings. It's going to impact everything. The bottom line, Trump bet big on the Supreme Court. He told his supporters that filling those seats would protect conservative values forever. And now his own appointees are showing that they care more about the Constitution than about personal loyalty. Whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing probably depends on your politics. But one thing's for sure, the relationship between Trump and the Supreme Court he built is complicated. And getting more complicated by the day. So what's the takeaway here? I think it's this. Power is temporary. Institutions are supposed to be permanent. Trump thought he could reshape the Supreme Court in his image. And in some ways he did, but he couldn't control it. And that loss of control is now coming back to bite him. The Supreme Court is doing what it's always done, interpreting the law. Sometimes that benefits conservatives. Sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't benefit Trump personally, his supporters feel betrayed. But that betrayal says more about unrealistic expectations than it does about the court itself. This is the story that's going to keep developing. More rulings will come. More reactions will follow. The political battle over the Supreme Court's legitimacy will continue. And through it all, Trump will be dealing with the reality that his greatest judicial achievement won't always protect him when he needs it most. Yeah, this is wild, and we're just getting started. Because if you think this ruling caused chaos, just wait until the next one drops. The Supreme Court's term is just beginning. And something tells me we haven't seen the last Trump-related decision that's going to shake things up. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. The implications are still unfolding, and the political earthquake this has triggered is going to reshape conversations about judicial independence, presidential power, and institutional loyalty for a long time to come. This moment represents a turning point in how we think about the relationship between presidents and the courts they shape, and the reverberations from this decision will echo through American politics for years ahead.